thank you all very much for coming out on this sort of glorious day that we have here, typical Boston, and making your way over here, and also to come out on what is a university holiday of Indigenous Peoples Day today. So I know that classes are not being held today, and so not many people on campus. So thank you for making the effort to come here. My name is James Robson. I am currently a faculty member in the Department of East Asian Languages and Civilizations, but also currently the director of the Harvard Yenjing Institute. Prior to that, I was the director of the Harvard Asia Center, which is sponsoring today's event. And it is the Harvard Asia Center that has really taken the lead on helping to develop the study of Southeast Asia at Harvard, and as part of that, particular focus on the Philippines as well. I was just in the Philippines 3 weeks ago as part of my new responsibilities at the Yenjing Institute, which are also trying to set up some institution connections with universities in the Philippines as well. And so we hope to keep building this as we go along. I know that there are many people in the audience here today that were over in Harvard Square yesterday for the Honk Festival and also the Philippine American Festival, the 4th annual one of that. So, and I know JR's up there in the back. He rocked the house, yeah. Where is he? There he is. Okay, yeah. Oh, he's got his Harvard swag on too. Awesome. How about that? But also a big thank you to, I see Kathy and Patrick here for all they did to set this up. A big round of applause for them. Also to Geraldine Acuna Sunshine for all of her
and Gabe
efforts,
up there.
And support. And Gabe is up there somewhere in the back as well. There he is.
And Sophie.
All right, and Sophie and Teddy too. So. And so this, that was a really wonderful event yesterday that even despite the rain, had a huge turnout for that. And for those of you who did not come, you will have missed a very wonderful presence of our Senator Risa Hontiveros, who actually sang a song on stage. As we were coming into the room today, and I think the thought crossed her mind, this is sort of looks like a setup that you might find in a jazz bar. And so if we can, we'll see if we can convince her to perhaps do that again. That would be really special, but we won't, no pressure. So the... A couple of things I wanted to mention before. I also wanted to shout out, where did Lady Eileen Orsall go? She's here. There's always sitting in the back. For those of you who don't know, Lady Eileen is the first instructor of Tagalog in the history of Harvard University. And more than that, in addition to teaching language, has done a lot to support events related to the culture and food of the Philippines as well. So thank you, Lady Eileen. And one or two last quick thank yous for staff of the Asia Center who have come out on a day which should be their holiday, which is Jorge Espada here. Thank you. And also Jorge has been he was my partner in crime when we started really pushing on the Southeast Asia Initiative and on the Philippines as well. And so I just appreciate the fact that he and the current director, Michael Pewitt, are continuing with this effort very strongly. And then also helping out today is Tenzin Nodup. There he is in the corner, yeah, as well, coming out. So thank you all. So for those of you who have been around Harvard for a while or paying attention to the connections between Harvard and the Philippines, will have known that there is a long history of the connections between Harvard and the Philippines that might surprise some of you, that this goes back all the way to the 1950s. When in the 1950s, Charles Romulo, who was at that time was the president of the UN General Assembly, and he came and gave the commencement speech here in 1950. Wow. And I think, as far as I've been able to tell, I think that was the very first influential political figure who came to Harvard, and he went on to serve in the foreign ministry, I believe it was. And then, you know, these connections have carried on down to the present day. All of you will be well aware that from 1980 to 1993, the Aquino family was living in Cambridge, and also had connections with MIT and the Harvard Kennedy School as well. And so that was kind of the beginning of this larger connection. Then in 2014, Noynoy Aquino came and gave an address while he was serving as president, and gave an address over at the Kennedy School as well. As we moved down into the 1920s, in 1921, of course, or excuse me, 2021, Maria Ressa received the Nobel Peace Prize. Given that was just announced for this year, just the other day, it would be remiss not to say something about that. I'm proud to say that prior to her receiving the Nobel Peace Prize, we had already been in discussion with her to have her as a speaker in the Philippine Speaker Series, which she did in 2022. And it was a wonderful event because she had just received the Nobel Peace Prize as well. In that same year, we also had Leni Robredo, who I had a conversation very much like this today, who came just after her loss in the election, unfortunately, but we still had a very wonderful conversation with her. Then in 2024, Maria Ressa became the second Filipino commencement speaker at Harvard, and that was in 2024. And finally, in 2024 then, we also had a week-long visit by Ed Garcia, the famous political activist, and he gave a series of 3 lectures, which became his most recent book, which is entitled Reimagining Resistance, which just came out about 6 to 8 months ago. And I urge you to take a look at that if you're interested. And I believe Senator Hontiveros also had worked with Ed at one point with the Peace Coalition, or I forget the title of it. Yeah, Coalition for Peace. Yeah. And so those are some of the connections that lead up to today. In fact, I should mention one more. I know I see some familiar faces in the audience who came out on the date after Ed Garcia finished his lectures. Then we did a book launch for the book entitled 6 Filipino Women for Justice. And indeed, oh great, I see a copy being held up there. And in that book there is a really wonderful profile of our speaker today, Senator Risa Hontiveros. And at the end of today's lecture, I will have successfully completed interviews with 3 of the 6 that are in that book. And so I think I just need to go down the list and just keep this up. I would love to add Leila de Lima to the list, so if anybody can help me with those connections, I'm happy to. Okay, good. Well, I'll be in touch, let's just say. Okay, so that's the background of kind of where this fits into a very sketched summary of where the Philippines and Filipino politicians and diplomats have fit into Harvard in recent years. Yeah, feel free, come on, you can sit right up front. And so today we are extremely, extremely honored to have Senator Risa Hontiveros with us today, fitting us into a rather busy travel schedule here in the United States and having to fly out this evening. As all of you know, if you wouldn't be here if you didn't, you probably know much about her biography and the kind of political work that she's been doing. But just for those who don't know her work so much, I think we could say that she is really the prime and leading opposition figure within the Philippine Senate at present. She had previously served as a representative as well, and the years for that, what year was that? 2004 to 2010, and then was elected to the Senate 2016, and then re-elected in 2022. Throughout her career, as many of you will know, she has really stood up for the dispossessed, the underrepresented, and has always been active in trying to pass laws and write legislation to help, and particularly those who are underrepresented, and also particularly fighting for women and solo parents is something that really has stood out to me about her work. She has, at a younger stage of her career, what we got a glimpse of yesterday in the Harvard Square could have been her career. She was a singer and in theater and successfully auditioned for a prime role in The Sound of Music, and also South Pacific. But in between the South Pacific, well, maybe she got lost there, but didn't get lost. Attained a new direction, and in the 1980s, while as a student at Ateneo University, started to become much more politically active, and also all the way back to high school. Actually, if you read the biography of her in the Six Filipino Women for Justice, you can read all about it. But she was working on anti-nuclear organizing and became much more active in politics in the 1980s. And my first visit, well, actually not a first visit, I was born in the Philippines, but the first time I went back was in 1985 while I was living in Taiwan. And for those of you who remember the mid-1980s in the Philippines, this was under the Marcos era, which I think probably goes a long way to understanding her activism within politics. But that was the beginning of the major street protests and civil disobedience that began to happen in the mid-1980s, which I saw in 1985, the EDSA movement that was taking place there. And she was quite active in all of that as well. So I think that will be enough just to give you a little background up to her current position as a senator in the Philippine government. And I would like to now turn it over to her to provide some opening comments, and then we will have kind of a free-flowing discussion here, as she described, a kind of fireside chat, if you will. I wish we had a fire today, actually. It would be very nice. But please join me in welcoming Senator Risa Hontiveros.
Salamat, James. Thank you. Magandang tanghali po sa inyong lahat. Good noon to everyone. So as James has said, I'm Risa Hontiveros. I'm a daughter of a senior citizen mom, still with us, sibling to 5 others, solo mom to 4, a senator in the Philippines. Thank you so much to Harvard Center Asia for inviting me to this non-fireside fireside chat. I really, really appreciate it. This is actually, my team and I didn't just fit this into my itinerary. This is actually the culmination of a week's visit to the United States, first in Las Vegas and then here in Boston, to meet with and have town hall meetings with the Filipino-American communities in both cities, to be with them launching their Filipino town in Las Vegas, only the 2nd Filipino town in the United States after Los Angeles. Okay, I said it. After LA. And then that, as James said, that wonderful, exhilarating honk parade yesterday, and then the Filipino-American Festival hosted by the great Harvard Square Philippine-American Association. And then finally this exciting for me and for my team conversation with you. As James also said, I became an activist as a teenager in high school, continued in college, worked as a community organizer, peace movement activist, member of the Philippine government peace negotiating panel with the Communist Party of the Philippines, National Democratic Front, New People's Army, worked for a decade and a half in broadcasting, and then became a founding member of Akbayan Citizens Action Party. Stood as its representative in those 6 years that James mentioned in the House of Representatives, and now I'm on my 2nd term in the Senate. So you could call me a lifelong activist. And I do plan, after politics, to go back to my first love, theater and music. So I was really just ambushed by activism and politics. So I'm going back to where I first fell in love with a way of life. As some of you may know, as far as my work so far, chairing the Senate Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality, that our biggest investigation so far had been for at least a couple of years on the Philippine offshore gaming operations, or POGOs. Actually, scam hubs, also cryptocurrency scam hubs, known here in the West as pig butchering scams, operating out of the Philippines. And we discovered several other countries in Southeast Asia trafficking Filipino women to these other hubs in the region, also trafficking women from these other hubs into the Philippines, forcing them to work as scammers to their shop. They were recruited usually online on the messaging apps that should bear more accountability for these continuing crimes and these actual criminal networks operating in the region, forced to work as scammers under very inhumane working conditions, including physical punishments if they didn't meet their quotas, so torture. The women especially were subjected to sexual harassment, and some of them even rape. And we first learned about this from a woman, a Filipina, who begged my office to rescue some of them, hundreds of Filipinos by that time, from such a scam hub in Myanmar. So with the help of an international NGO operating inside the country, my team was able to work with the Philippine Embassy in Bangkok to rescue at least 1 dozen of them at first at the Thailand-Myanmar border. Back home in the Philippines, we continued investigating the POGOs, only to chance upon a very mysterious, ostensibly Filipino mayor in Bamban, Tarlac, just a few hours north of Metro Manila, the famous or infamous Alice Guo, who turned out to be not the Filipina Alice Guo, but Chinese national, Guo Huaping. So she had posed as a Filipino for all those decades, run for public, and won public office, and actually exercised power for at least a year protecting the POGO scams in the Philippines. So POGOs are tied up with all these phenomena: human trafficking, the need to rescue its victim survivors, now also this misuse, misrepresentation of Filipino identity and identity papers by foreign nationals. And since this, for us Filipinos at home, is tied up with our complicated relationship with China, is the reason that the investigation into the POGO, into Alice Guo and others like her, the angle of foreign malign influence and interference has not been laid to rest, the espionage angle. And all of these, we have found in the current days, is tied up with the corruption in the Philippines. One of our historic problems, tied up with the corruption of immigration officials to allow the traffic into and out of POGO hubs in the Philippines, the corruption of what should be our regulatory agencies in terms of the issuance of Filipino birth certificates, Filipino passports, and the like, and the corruption of even members of the political world in the Philippines and members of the bureaucracy, tied up with the still being investigated flood control project scams involving not just the contractors themselves, but definitely corrupted Department of Public Works and Highways officials and employees, and unfortunately corrupted legislators, both in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. So that's a brief addition to what James has already shared. And if there's anything more that you'd like to talk about our home far away, I'm just so happy to be in that conversation with you. Thank you. Salamat po.
Thank you. So I'm going to make sure that we leave plenty of time for questions from you all in the audience. I do have a few things that I would like just to open up things while you all think about some questions as well that you might like to ask the senator. I think I'll leave perhaps the current corruption scandal down for just to put that to the side for just a minute, because I have a feeling there's going to be a fair amount of interest in discussing that, and perhaps see if we can get an update from the senator about where things stand with that. But I'd kind of like to go back to your roots and talk about some of the other types of issues that are currently happening in the Philippines, ongoing issues, I would say. I mean, one can think back to the Duterte administration and fighting against the drug war and the extrajudicial killings that were taking place. But I would love to hear just a little bit more about some of your current work, particularly in terms of supporting families and also supporting single or solo parents, but particularly solo mothers, and where that stands as well, and what kinds of things are you currently engaged with on that front?
Thank you.
Yeah.
We were able to pass the expanded Solo Parents Welfare Act a few years ago. And we're overseeing its implementation because solo parents, including a lot of solo moms who actually mobilized to pass that bill into law, were also quick to give feedback about how it was being implemented, or about how it was not being implemented, or not implemented fully or well in their own local government units. So, but for starters, the law provides for discounts, subsidies, preferential options in terms of government housing, scholarships, from basic to tertiary education, both for kids of solo parents and the solo parents themselves, given certain qualifications. So most of the feedback has been around these benefits that solo parents themselves, my fellow solo parents, really worked hard for when pushing the bill into law. So now it's budget hearings and going into plenary debates season again in the Philippines, and the solo parents organizations are mobilized again to bring their experiences and their recommended corrections to the implementation, and even proposed amendments, further amendments to the law.
Well, I'll just follow up briefly on that with, I'm not sure if Mercedes is here today or not, but I'll ask on her behalf. I have a student here who's writing a senior thesis that many of in the audience might be surprised to learn that there are only 2 places in the world today where divorce is illegal. That would be the Vatican and the Philippines.
Yeah.
And so I imagine that you've given some thought to this, and is there where would things stand in terms? I think there's some slight wiggle room for Muslims in the Philippines on this regard, but what are your thoughts about perhaps new legislation on that?
Well, it would be old new legislation because we've been filing refiling the divorce bill as it was originally named in Congress for several Congresses. And yes, we've been inspired by and envious of and learned from the Bangsamoro Filipino Muslims, because their Sharia, their Muslim code of personal law allows for divorce. And to segue from our conversation about solo parents, it is also solo parents, especially solo moms, who had to do without the lengthy and expensive annulment proceedings, who had to do without the legal separation proceedings. Only 2 of those are provided for right now and have their own limitations. It was also solo moms who said, we need a divorce law. Not that, because most poor people, poor women, hardly have any property to divide, but they said we need a divorce law at least to provide for child support. And that is one of the important provisions in our divorce law. An interesting point about that, when I was working in the House of Representatives for Akbayan decades ago, and working at that time on the SOGIESC equality bills, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and sex characteristics bill. So let's bring it around to the representatives. And several of the senior ones would tell me, no, Risa, I cannot sign this. So, okay. Then they'd call me, but wait, when you have a divorce bill, come back to me.
Come back, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I will support it. And I've experienced something similar recently in the Senate. In fact, one of our senior leadership was the one who advised me, Risa, this is okay, provisions-wise, but maybe don't call it the divorce bill anymore. Call it the dissolution of marriage bill. And
Yeah.
a rose by any other rose?
Sure.
So I said yes, and it seems like it might be somehow an easier sell, but it's basically an expansion of the grounds for legal separation in the Philippine Civil Code, but by any other name, providing for divorce for those who want and deserve a second chance at life and love and family. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Now, working from the most recent events and then thinking about other things have been pretty active in the Philippines over the last week even, let's just say, or 2 weeks. So you've been in the US for a couple of days now, but going back to your, particularly some of the work you were doing during the Duterte administration, and particularly in relationship to Philippine-China relations.
Yes.
Everyone will know that yesterday there was an incident in, well, the newspapers always write the South China Sea, but let's refer to it as the West Philippine Sea.
Thank you.
And so we have this, we knew that these types of incidents pop up and they cause geopolitical challenges every time it happens. And so I know, there's been an evolution under the current administration about that relationship with China. I think it started off in a very different footing and is now transformed a little bit. So I was hoping you might be able to say a little something about where things stand and your position on the connection, this issue of Philippine-Chinese relationships.
As one of the leaders of the Philippine opposition, foreign relations is one of the few but important policy fronts that the President and I are aligned. So I appreciated his pivot back, not just solely to the United States in a renewed alliance, but to a wider coalition of like-minded nations. I've always said a bigger coalition is a better coalition. So that we not be trapped between choosing just between the United States or just China. But as we see now, a growing number of countries, most of whom are also, like the Philippines, signatories to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and who support the Philippines in our historic win at The Hague in 2016, which of course China has always brushed off in the encounters between Philippine Navy or Coast Guard or BFAR, Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, and our counterparts in China. There's always that exchange of radio messages, and when the Philippine side says on what basis we are patrolling these waters and you must exit, China's response, they also have their own script about what they are upholding and what they reject on our side. Of course, the other policy front on which the President and I are aligned is on POGOs, because he announced a ban on POGOs in his State of the Nation address. That was followed by an executive order, although not, it had loopholes, but which I pointed out to the Executive Secretary. But in the Senate, we are also pushing forward with an anti-POGO law. And on this foreign policy front, we can't help but go back to how we ended up in this much more difficult situation with China, especially during the Duterte years. Well, personally, those years were, for me, and I think for many Filipinos, a nightmare. I think it isn't just from the pandemic that we are still unable to process our trauma. And it's on the matter of national sovereignty, not treason, not betrayal of Filipino national interests in that part of the South China Sea that is the West Philippine Sea. That it's very important that we've been able to pivot away from what the stance was during the previous administration, and it mirrored this Manila-Beijing special relationship was mirrored in the POGO, because it was during the previous administration that a very POGO-friendly and lax policy allowed them to really come in physically, not just electronically. We also have an overly heavy Chinese presence in our national power or energy grid, also in the Philippine telecommunications industry, so the POGO, and definitely in our waters. So it's important that now we try to prevent the outbreak of any hot hostilities anywhere in the West Philippine Sea. We're watching with great solidarity Taiwan. It's a signal year for them in 2027. And aside from the 250,000 Filipinos living and working there, we also know that we're with Taiwan in the first island chain. Yeah. We're just the southern flank of China. And God forbid, if anything, I also pray nothing hot erupts in the Taiwan Strait, we will certainly be drawn into something. So it's much, much better we rely on our most powerful political and diplomatic weapon, which is our victory at The Hague, together with this bigger coalition, this better coalition of like-minded nations who are not just expressing solidarity with us, but actually entering into bilateral or trilateral defense cooperation and doing joint exercises, whether bureaus of fisheries or coast guards or navies. So hopefully we will be able diplomatically and politically, together with all the notes verbal of the Department of Foreign Affairs, be able to compel China non-militarily to behave, push her back, and somehow compel a peaceful and strong conflict prevention and conflict resolution arrangement that is rules-based perhaps in the whole of the South China Sea with the other claimant nations.
Great. I think in your answer, you really demonstrated how if you pull on a thread of any of these issues, it really unties a whole snarl of related issues. And I think, when you think about what's happening in the West Philippine Sea, it really is tied up with food security as well, and fish and rights to fish in those waters and things like that as well. So the last question I'll ask, and then we'll open it up to all of you, is about the recent double earthquake that happened just off of Mindanao near Davao City. Rather than just speak of per se about that specific earthquake, these are often described as natural disasters. I'm of the opinion that there is no such thing as a natural disaster. Usually it is due to governments and building in places that are difficult or problematic, building regulations, or in the failed response to those events. And so I wondered if you could say a little bit about, the Philippines is in a particularly fraught position of being hit, being on the chain of fire, so to speak, in terms of earthquakes, but also disproportionately, along with other parts of Southeast Asia, being disproportionately impacted by the effects of climate change, rising sea levels, the increased severity of storms and things like that. So in general, I know there's been a lot of rethinking and planning in terms of disaster response, and would love to hear your thoughts just about what's going on now in terms, this is not, if anything, it's going to be a problem that will increase rather than decrease over time.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true. And we have had many designs how to strategically prepare for and effectively respond to these, natural disasters. But I agree with you, they're exacerbated in their effects on us human beings, on our built environment, and also the natural environment, because when we don't implement what we've already been told by experts, by scientists, by advocates about the how-tos, it's not just a double earthquake in Cebu. It's a series, even for us Filipinos, it's becoming shocking already. A series of earthquakes, first in Cebu, and then in Davao Oriental, and then again in Cebu, also in Surigao del Sur. And people, and I think also there was one in Isabela up in northern Luzon. So people all over the Philippines, including in Metro Manila, but not just there, everywhere are, again, really, really nervous, fearful, again, putting together our go bags and discussing with family members, okay, where do we evacuate to, given in which quadrant of Metro Manila or other regions we are, how will we get in touch with each other again. So it's so top of mind, it's so imminent. And but I think also it mirrors there seems to be a shifting of the tectonic plates under our archipelago, and it mirrors the shifting of the plates politically as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe it's some kind of osmosis. The energies are just exchanging between the human and natural worlds. But also, concretely, the ghost or sub-quality nature of some of the infrastructure projects that were built in the past few years has been exposed by these natural disasters. We've seen infrastructure in the recently quake-hit provinces and cities just fail. And, you know, victim survivors saying, what happened here? This was so expensive. And, you know, there were all these big tarpaulins and billboards of the politicians who supposedly built them. Hey, they were built from taxpayers' money, citizens' money, only held by government. Supposedly, Congress was supposed to appropriate them properly. But they failed. It's as if Mother Nature is exposing human folly. I'm just happy to say that one hospital that I participated in budgeting for several years ago, which was in the epicenter of the double earthquakes of Cebu province in Bogo City, absolutely no damage. And the hospital director, Dr. Yuranco, was crying from relief because no one was injured or killed there, unlike in other infrastructure elsewhere in the province. And now that Bogo Hospital and their personnel are really serving the victim survivors. So, but in general, our disaster preparedness and response is devalued by the corruption, the inability or unwillingness to implement as provided for by various master plans throughout the year. And it's really our citizens who pay the price when these natural disasters strike.
Great. So let's open it up now to the audience, and maybe I can help by calling on people. So you and I'll. So please, for those who would like to ask a question of the senator, you can just raise your hands. I'm going to start here because the hand went up so quickly, but it was also in my my vantage point. So please.
Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting such an illuminating.
And if you could speak real loud too, because we'll try to.
Borrow my mic?
Is there a roving mic?
I don't think we have one, so just speak really loud and we'll,
Thank
yeah.
you for hosting an illuminating conversation. Thank you so much for spending time with us, Senator.
Thank you.
Just as an introduction, my name is Annalisa Balares. I'm an entrepreneur, an artist, and a philanthropist, Filipino, but based here. And I've also had the privilege of serving on the Gender Advisory Board of the President of the UN General Assembly for the last couple of years. And one of the issues that we tackle among many facing women around the world is the issue of forced sexual slavery.
Yeah.
There are an estimated 6 million people around the world that are forced into sexual slavery. Majority of them are women. And the challenge is now with the introduction of the internet apps and technology, that is actually multiplied to so many. So I just want to take a moment to thank you for the law that you passed that is preventing online, pornography and that are protecting children and women. And I'd love to ask you, since I've been hearing about the prevalence of this in the Philippines and Southeast Asia and all over the world, can you update us on what the status is of this amazing law that you passed and where you think the hurdles are in implementing the law?
Salamat, Annalisa. Well, maybe in a way similar to the disaster prevention and response front, the hurdles are always, but there's an additional dimension to this. So the hurdles are in terms of the capacity and the proper orientation of the law enforcement authorities, the investigating authorities, and then other pillars of our judicial system. Another hurdle or challenge is to expand from Philippine law enforcement to partnerships and coordination with their counterparts elsewhere in the region and in the world, because there are various advocacy and programmatic initiatives also going on, parallel ones in those other countries. And if we are sort of a sending nation for these kinds of materials, if not the actual persons trafficked in sex trafficking, some other nations may be receiving nations. So there's this kind of supply and demand, a very dark supply and demand relationship going on. We were able to pass so far the Anti-OSAEC, or Online Sexual Abuse and Exploitation of Children Bill, and CSAM, or Child Sexual Abuse and Exploitation Materials law. We've passed it into law. Some of the most innovative provisions there have been additional mandates and accountabilities for previously stakeholders who were not within the line of sight of the law. So the social media platforms, the internet service providers, and the financial intermediaries to ask Facebook Meta, TikTok, Twitter, and others, Google even, to ask in the Philippines our telecommunications companies, who are also, of course, the internet service providers, to ask the banks and the money lending services, who are respectively platforms for this kind of commerce, for the virtual advertising of these materials, who are channels for connectivity, but for such dire communications and transactions, and yes, channels for the monies that exchange hands in this kind of terrible economy. So these were for the law, mostly protecting children. We're trying to learn from them now, not just the provisions, but feedback about how they've actually been operationalized in working to combat and eventually, hopefully, eliminate the use of AI, deep fakes, to dehumanize women, and to monetize this kind of material, definitely without their consent, definitely in a human rights violation of their dignity and their rights. So, salamat. Sa
Thank you.
tanong.
We need to make your law global.
Yeah.
Yes, well, we're learning a lot also from best practices and models around the world.
Good, thank you. Thank you for that great question. I normally wouldn't call on somebody in the back row without a mic, but I know this gentleman can project his voice.
Yes.
JR, I'm tempted to make you sing your question, but go ahead. You've earned it. Yes, I am, yeah.
Thanks to Risa for being here. Thank you,
Salamat.
Risa. I have a bit of a lighter question for you.
Okay.
Korea has developed partnerships with their government to help catapult their local entertainment. K-pop, the boom of K-pop, the boom of their TV series, which led to a boom in their tourism, which was beneficial for their economy as well.
Yep.
And I believe Filipinos also have the ability to be on the main stage globally as well. So I was wondering if our Filipino government has any plans of replicating that strategy that Korea has done.
Salamat. And you're certainly one fantastic example. Woo!
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, our government should really do more with Filipino artists and cultural workers. Korea is one of the best practices models, right, in our own region. How they've projected their soft power, yes, through K-pop and K-drama, also Korean food, to basically conquer the world, not just the Philippines, I think here also in the United States and elsewhere all over our planet. And the important thing, as you pointed out, JR, is that they did it very purposefully, very deliberately, as a government policy. There's already at least one important legislation now. It's the Creative Industry Act, championed by Representative Christopher Ortof de Venecia, himself a person of the arts, and we worked with him on the Senate side. And it's a first step, but just the first step. There's also another one, the so-called Eddie Garcia Law, named after a veteran, well-loved, wonderful late actor, which focuses on occupational safety and health for actors, especially when they're filming on a set or in location. But government has to be a lot more comprehensive than that to assist Filipinos working at home and all over the world to have that kind of policy and executive support, whether at home or abroad. So count me in. I'd really appreciate your inputs. Because whenever we meet with partner organizations or sectors, we always ask, do you have a bill? Or do you have like even a one-page policy brief? Otherwise, we can do a workshop together and work out what you think is the legislative agenda, and then maybe go at it one by one, piecemeal. What are the most urgent bills, so that we can create a policy environment for Filipino, Phil-Am, and other people's artists and cultural workers to work with all over the world.
Great.
Salamat.
Yeah. While a workshop would be great, I think an RHJR duet might go a long way to launch this new initiative. Let's see. How about on the left in the back row there, please? Yes, you. Sorry, I don't know everybody's names here. I'm afraid. Sorry. And speak really loud.
Salamat po sa pagdalo.
Salamat.
I am a student in Harvard Medical School. I'm taking global health related and actually doing research on intimate partner violence and how women in Negros Oriental and Medina are being liberated or not liberated. But I have a question, more political question, which is on the flood control project scam. We've been watching the news and been for like months now, and we're wondering if any of them will actually be accountable, and how do we make them accountable and actually be imprisoned? And besides, aside from just doing all these hearings and even now postponing the hearings, and in light of the earthquakes naman po, how do we support the women and children that are mostly affected by these?
Yes, salamat. Supporting women and children as part of their families and communities, but also differentially as women and children. Thank you for pointing that out, is an important aspect of disaster preparedness and response, because we did experience and document, for example, during the pandemic, that women and children were differentially impacted. And yet, our views, experiences, inputs were not factored in to the disaster preparedness and response, say, master plans, as good as the master plans were at that point in time. So we actually also have a pending bill, which is the Gender Sensitive and Inclusive Disaster Protocols Bill, still pending in Congress. There are even particulars like how can, say, milk bank operators immediately reach breastfeeding moms in evacuation centers after natural disasters. How to provide safe spaces for women and children also in those evacuation camps, where the customary, not just sexism and misogyny, but also sexual harassment and even assault can continue even after a disaster, natural disaster, and during the disaster rescue and relief phase. How to continue some form of schooling for children while still in evacuation camps, and then when they go home during the rehabilitation phase, to build more, not just resilient school buildings and classrooms, but more disaster preparedness oriented academic communities for these children as well. And then you also asked particularly about intimate partner violence, and the whole context was?
No, I was doing research on it.
Yes. Oh, sorry. But your first question.
Was on the flood project.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
definitely we have to have people
that.
go to jail. Yes, we cannot just have our blue ribbon investigations in the Senate, the TRICOM investigations in the House, the investigations of the Independent Commission on Infrastructure. I was hoping that all three together with what, if we could discover 1/3 each of the stories and then complete the whole story, including what each of the other two cannot or will not expose because some colleagues are implicated, but altogether, I really believe the complete story, as complete as we can tell it, must be exposed. The case build-up continue because it has already begun on the part, for example, of the National Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Justice. Cases have to be filed, and they are starting to be filed also by the Department of Justice, by the Bureau of Internal Revenues and other agencies. People have to go to jail. We know that corruption has been going on for a long time, too long a time, but it is now that people's, citizens, taxpayers' anger is at such a scale and intensity that this ugly genie cannot be put back into the bottle and the bottle stopper. There's already been 1 day of nationwide rallies, big ones in Metro Manila and in other metropolises. And there are others planned for November 30. So first on Ninoy Aquino Day, and I'm sorry, Martial Law Commemoration Day, and then next will be Andres Bonifacio Day. People want that those accountable among the contractors like the Discayas, among the Department of Public Works and Highways, and some of these officials, the highest ranking is an Undersecretary Bernardo, and legislators, including some of my colleagues, that if found guilty by the investigations and recommended to be prosecuted, that they must all have their day in court, and the citizens must have their day in court.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Oh gosh, do you have any preference here? I was trying to go boy, girl, so.
It's good. Zipper method.
Why don't we go over here, because I saw this hand first. Jorge, how long can we go till? Whenever we want.
Wow.
Okay. All right. Hope you all brought some snacks with you. We'll have to ask the senator how long she's willing to take questions for. But we started a little bit late, so we can at least go till say 1:15. So we'll try to get in as many questions as possible. So please.
I said Lionel po,
Hi.
former civil servant as well, taking a master's degree. Congratulations on getting the Committee on Health.
Salamat.
It's a sector that's been kind of neglected under past leadership, politicized and stuff. So really excited about that. Wanted to ask about your plans as chairperson of the committee,
Yay.
especially with regard to childhood malnutrition.
Yes.
Something I've been working on, and something we haven't been good at bringing down over the past 4 decades.
Right. Oh, salamat for that. Yes, I'm again after 9 years again chairing the Senate Committee on Health, and so excited with so many plans, a whole agenda to really push the full and correct implementation of the Universal Healthcare Law, which was, patterned on the WHO model of universal healthcare systems, with complete the 6 pillars and policy agenda for each of the pillars. And child health and malnutrition is really not just strategic, but even already urgent issue in the Philippines, with terrible incidences of malnutrition, stunting, even wasting. And prior to going back to the Senate Committee on Health, at least we were able to pass the Kalusugan at Nutrisyon ng Magnanay Act, which is the Health and Nutrition Mother and Child law, providing for nutrition for the first 1,000 days, that golden window from the time the baby is in the mother's womb until the baby is 2 years old. So making sure the mom has the nutrition she needs, and then until the baby is 2 years old, that his or her body and brain are properly fed, so that he or she is also prepared to optimally learn in school and beyond, and eventually also have a decent job or livelihood or entrepreneurship, and be healthy enough to create and participate in family life at his or her own proper time. So that's all front and center also in the health agenda. I mean, for me, it's a great overlap between the Senate Committee on Women, Children, and Family and Gender Equality and the Senate Committee on Health. I've been visiting government public hospitals recently, the Corazon Locsin Montelibano Hospital in Bacolod, the East Avenue Medical Center in Quezon City, and the Philippine Geriatric Center at the Jose Reyes Memorial Hospital in Manila. And boy, the doctors, nurses, and other hospital staff there are so inspiring. The patients, I can see from what, limitedly what I could see within 1/2 day of visiting with them, are quite aware about their treatment plan and seem to be participating in it. And these, my dream, that's why I talk about the government hospitals, is that our public health system be as good as, if not even better than, our private health system. Similar dream for the education sector. So these hospitals are so inspiring because they're very candid, telling their feedback about how the universal healthcare law has or has not been or has not well been implemented. And they have such vision, such dreams and plans for how their hospital will better serve their community. So salamat sa encouragement. We're very, very excited to work with all the health stakeholders.
Thank you very much for that question. Also, please get in touch with me as well. We, a couple years ago, were in touch with a scholar over in the Harvard School of Public Health who had pioneered early childhood malnutrition surveys and work in Africa, but wanted to apply the same methodology to parts of Southeast Asia. And so we were trying to find some funding to do that in the Philippines. So get in touch, please. So over here, you've been waiting. Thank you. Speak real loud too, sorry.
Your presence here is not just an honor, but an inspiration.
Salamat.
By way of introduction, I'm a member of the Harvard Square Philippine American Alliance. Thank you, Patrick. And my question is about, as you well know, there's a significant number of OFWs in the Middle East region.
Right.
Especially given the current growing uncertainty with respect to immigration policy in the U.S., how do you imagine you plan to support them in the near future?
Salamat. It was actually U.S. legislators and community activists who started this cycle of mutual assistance that I hope we can sustain and set up more solidly. They visited the Philippines, and I was lucky to have one sit down with them. And these were Filipino-American, Latino-American, African-American colleagues. And they shared what Filipino-American and Friends of the Philippines here in America have also been sharing about in the past week. Of course, one front line of assistance and even defense would be from the Philippine government itself to make representations to our counterparts here to continue to uphold the rights and welfare as has historically been experienced, to work together for whatever appropriate, say, joint in the Philippines, concurrent in the Philippines, and any, if not legislative initiatives, maybe solidarity statements, say, between legislators in the Philippines and here in the United States about this very important question. If you were talking about overseas Filipinos and overseas Filipino workers, Filipinos who are Filipinos and many of whom are also American citizens. So people of both countries, both nations. Government at home also has to prepare if any will have to come home just for a time or for longer in terms of generating the decent jobs that the labor movement in the Philippines have long been fighting for, in a labor scene that is very, very challenging for them, where less than 5% of labor is actually organized for various reasons. The traditional unfair labor practices or union busting, and the newer phenomena of the new world of work, having to think about new ways of organizing, say, young people in the BPO sector, how to organize domestic workers in households, and such. Another great idea I heard from a colleague, a compatriot, a friend here in the United States is to invite Phil-American lawyers to come together and work together with Filipino Americans who may be seeking legal advice or even protection or service in the current context, and so that it's always better to be proactive. So I think from the government sectors in both our countries, from the civil society sectors in both our countries, both of which have a lot of people-to-people exchanges going on historically, and maybe also from the private sectors. I'll consult with our private sector back home. I think there is a lot of harm reduction, to borrow a health term that we love, a lot of harm reduction that can be done, and hopefully not, but if and when harm is done, to repair it, to there be some kind of redress for the individuals and families who might be involved.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to make an executive decision here about, I want to make sure that I give Harvard undergraduates a time to ask a question. And so if you're not a Harvard undergraduate, you can put your hand down for a second, and then we'll take a few, we'll take the last, maybe what we'll do is take one from a Harvard undergraduate, and then we can take maybe 2 or 3 questions together, and you can sort of answer them in total, and we'll see where that brings us in terms of time. So we have one remaining hand left of the Harvard undergrads representing. Okay,
Right.
please. Yes.
Salamat po sa pagtanong. My name is Aaron. I'm a 4th-year student here at Harvard College. Along with some other people here, I'm one of the representatives from the Harvard Undergraduate Philippine Forum, Harvard's Philippine Association. I'm super happy to hear that you were able to go to the opening of Las Vegas Filipino Forum, because I think that there's such an obstacle for Filipino Americans and other Filipinos living in diaspora to access Filipino representatives to understand the affairs going on in the motherland. But my question here today is, I'm curious to hear more about if you had any plans in your near future about potentially running for president of the Philippines. Plans to prevent corruption, not only in the Department of Women's Health, but across the entire government as well, to make sure that taxpayer money goes to the taxpayers.
Glad we left the easy one for last.
I know, right? Oh my gosh. Salamat, Aaron. People have said, anti-corruption advocates have said, it's not only in the Department of Public Works and Highways that there's corruption. We started to question even the Department of Health, about hundreds, 400 to 600 of rural health units and barangay or village health stations that were built, but for one reason or another are not operating. So they are, in a way, ghost projects. And it's a double whammy, because not only would they have wasted or corrupted taxpayer money, but they would also be withholding essential life-saving health services from the communities where they are supposed to serve. Department of Education is another one. From the time even that the Vice President was serving as Secretary of Education, the issue that we posed to her, that is one of the grounds in the archived impeachment complaint, was the allegedly corrupted confidential and intelligence fund. So yes, there are various fronts of governance where the anti-corruption work must go. So I'm glad that we are starting with prosecuting and eventually jailing those guilty of corruption in the flood control projects in the Department of Public Works and Highways. But yes, we need to really comb through all of government to root out and throw into the fireside um, eliminate eventually, that's what we're hoping, this terrible corruption, which rears its ugly face in many ways in our governance. And yes, speaking of governance, I'm one of the leaders of the opposition who's really working hard right now after the midterm elections last May, where we were able to elect 2 more senators from the opposition. Woo! Sorry for cheering my own words, but it's just news.
You have
I'm just
the right,
sharing
yeah.
it. Woo! Mabuhay, mga kababayan who helped. Thank you so much to the Filipino-American dual citizens and overseas absentee voters who were part of that. And we were also able to campaign for and help elect more parties from the opposition, like Akbayan, like ML of Rep. Laila, Akbayan, Rep. Chel, et al. And so I'm one of those working to unite all the opposition forces, parties and non-party formations alike, so that we can choose a common slate, common candidates, the strongest standard bearer, the strongest VP candidate, the strongest full slate for the Senate, the most number of strong district and party list nominees to run for the House of Representatives, and the biggest number we can muster of strong local government official candidates, so that the opposition can fight and win in 2028. And yes, I'm open. If the opposition decides on me, I'm open to being part of that slate.
I'm glad you got to that last part, because I was going to say there was one small part of that question that remained unanswered. But
I worked backwards to the first question from the second.
Okay, so now just pause for a second here. So we have, it's 1:15. Are we okay with if I take 3 questions, keep them short, and then we will, there is some food out in the concourse, so if you're getting hungry, just hold on a minute longer. And if I don't call on you, don't beat me up after this or take it personally. It's just purely a factor of time. So I'm just going to do some random ones. Such an exuberant hand. We're going to take that one there. In the front row here. Hang on just a second. I'm going to say which 3. So here, and then I'm going to come up over here. And sorry, we'll just do those 3. I imagine the senator will be around for a little bit longer. Perhaps you could ask in that time. So let's go in this order. First, second, third, and we'll be closest here then, okay? All right, and try to keep them short. Please don't give a lecture, but question, actually, okay? Thank you. Great.
But I grew up in
Oh, maupay, kulok.
And I grew up again in a very small municipal where it feels like politics is absolutely local. And there was an election where an independent ran against a political dynasty.
Yeah.
And their family got shot and killed. And so
Oh my
it
God.
feels like it's very disenfranchised and resigned to continue on with what's happening in the local level. Is there anything that can be done at a national level to address this?
Yes. Did I catch your name right? Yeah,
Lawrence,
Lawrence.
yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yes. Another long-standing bill that has had to be filed and refiled, like the divorce bill, is the anti-dynasty bill. The Constitution has commanded us to do this since 1987. But of course, nobody legislates against interest, self-interest. So, and especially the House, but I have to confess, also the Senate is too well represented in terms of dynasties. So, but Akbayan, ML, and others in both houses have refiled an anti-dynasty bill, or are about to refile an anti-dynasty bill, and using as an entry point, at least starting with the party list system, just to ban dynasties from the party list system. In the Senate, there are actually 4 bills pending on anti-dynasty. And that is one important reform. If we can clinch that, that will really be a game changer. There's already a law passed by the youth. So yay for the youth and students. Yeah, this was the SK, or Sangguniang Kabataan. This is the Youth Council Reform and Empowerment Law, which has an anti-dynasty provision. So we should follow the lead of the younger generation in this. So that's top of mind, an anti-dynasty law. And of course, the whole redistribution of wealth program on the economic side to also empower voters, not to have to choose vote buying money that will make my family survive for the next days or weeks, or voting for a party or candidate that I really believe will make things better. So it's economic empowerment also of the voters, aside from the cultural shift, our patriarchal culture in the Philippines, and how these two are so convenient to entrench, and also as a normal practice of dynasties.
I guess patriarchal is relative when you look at the United States compared to the Philippines, who has had female leaders, and many of the university leaders that I met with were mostly women. So anyway, we have a lot to learn still. Please, go.
Hontiveros, my name is Jen Orbeso, and I represent the Philippine Nurses Association of New England. I just want to express that we are continuously praying for your health. Kaibigan mo kami, and sagot ka namin.
Maraming salamat.
Nagkasakit kayo. But we know your staunch role in chasing after criminals, but nurses are bridge builders.
Yes.
And for so long, I don't know if you're aware that here in the United States, we comprise the 5% of the healthcare workforce.
Wow.
Some 150,000 Filipino nurses, and 2% out of that 5 are in advanced roles.
Wow.
So, as I have said, we are path builders. I wonder if you could help us support the Filipino nurses back home to act in advanced role. We want to be friends of the doctors as well, and we want to reach more kababayan.
Yes.
It's just that we cannot act at the best of our ability to treat, to diagnose, and to reach our kababayans who are really in need of these services. So what can you do for my fellow Filipino nurses back home?
And I second the motion that one.
All right.
Good. Glad I called on
Salamat,
her.
Gid Joji. Salamat, Jen. My daughter, my youngest, is also taking up nursing. She's in 3rd year and is excited to prepare for the boards next year. And because of her, and when she was growing up, she still is very asthmatic, and unfortunately was often in the hospital. It was really the nurses, even in our experience, aside from documented, are really at the front line of patient contact. And going around the public hospitals now in the Philippines, I see that also. And nurses have not been remiss in their organizing and educating among their ranks and us, the other societies, sorry?
We go home and
You go home, yeah. And you advocate, you lobby for proper legislation in the Philippines as well. So count me in as a continuing partner of the Philippine Nurses Association in the Philippines. Yes, no, they deserve it. So in the public sector, to be at the proper salary grade level, yeah, in the regular salary standardization laws for the nurses serving in the public sector, and the nurses in the private sector as well, both of whom really did yeoman and women's jobs even before and especially during the pandemic and until now. Nurses are critical stakeholders in that health human resources pillar of a universal healthcare system. So they really deserve, they need and they really deserve visibility in the eyes of government and society as large. So let's keep in touch. Yes, please, let's keep in touch. Salamat.
Great. Please.
Hi, Senator. My name is Jana. I'm from the Philippine Science High School.
Hey.
I'm a freshman at Harvard.
Wow.
Back home, I was involved in student activism with Centro, Daquila, and Yakapin. And one thing that all of these groups agree on is just as you're doing your important work at the top, something needs to be done at the ground level. Cultural shifts, narrative reform, as you were talking about. But the culture of the Philippines makes it hard to do that because of red tagging.
Yeah.
You call activists terrorists and communists, and it scares off a lot of the advocates, especially the youth. What can we do about that, especially to encourage fellow youth?
Yeah.
Salamat, Jana. We really need to create more safe spaces for young people, including students, including community youth. Yes, to exercise your rights to organize, to educate, to mobilize. even and especially in countries like ours back home, that can be quite risky or dangerous for them to move in. In the universities, in the school system in general, at least there's that principle of academic freedom that can be called upon to protect students when you are organizing inside and outside the universities. It's more challenging in the communities on the ground. But it's essential that young people feel safe in our public spaces. So government is responsible to create that. When we are relating with armed and uniformed services of our country, whether the armed forces or the national police, of which my late husband was an officer after graduating from the Philippine Military Academy. So I still have a lot of, well, not a lot, but I still have some really good friends from their ranks, including a good number of reform-minded, very professional, human rights-oriented officers. So dealing with their institutions, which are very hierarchical in nature, and so can be very difficult to reform. But historically in the Philippines, they were really at the front lines in terms of the counterinsurgency, and then recently in terms of the so-called war on drugs, which is really a war on the poor, the extrajudicial killings. So it's a very painful but necessary process that they too reform their institution. Because citizens, especially the young citizens, I mean, Jose Rizal, one of our national heroes, said, "Ang kabataan ang pag-asa ng bayan." The youth are the hope of our country. We have to make good on that. The private sector should also be minded about this, because where else do the young professionals come from but from the youth? Civil society is out there in front with you. So let's keep on working, especially you, because you are our hope for the future. Yeah, let's keep on working on a more democratic and just, a more equitable, a more caring and humane society for our country, for the future.
So I think that is a nice, hopeful, looking forward vision place to end. It's actually, interestingly, that was almost the exact, I could have quoted almost the exact same words that when Ed Garcia finished his lectures of looking to the future and the hope of the youth and the need, actually, for the youth. But this issue of labeling and any opposition figure or anybody who is fighting for particular principles. I mean, this Senator Hontiveros herself being red tagged in her day as well, right? And these kinds of issues, I think, are something that we constantly have to fight against. But for me, it's just been a really incredible honor to have Senator Risa Hontiveros here today. In learning, we only met in person yesterday, which was a real pleasure, but knowing her work, and I can't think of anybody really who, having read her biography and learned more about her evolution as a political figure, somebody from such a young age who has maintained a kind of constant moral compass in terms of fighting for certain principles, reason, human rights, and the underrepresented, I think has carried through as a thread that runs through the entire work that she's done. And I think we've heard some of that today to see how those are now being carried forward to address new problems and ongoing problems that evolve. So thank you so much for all of your work, and thank you for spending time with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
Thank you,
it's a
James.
pleasure
Salamat.
to